Recently, I've been getting some questions from viewers about the equipment that we've been using to make our videos at Atomic Age Pictures. I have a cat that's trying to go out the dog door. Hi, I'm Doug and this is Atomic Age Pictures. Recently we've been getting some questions from viewers about the equipment that we've been using to make our videos. So I thought I would make a series of videos and talk about the various cameras and sound equipment and maybe some of the editing equipment that we use to make the videos here at Atomic Age Pictures. And today we are going to start with what's in this little package right here. The Yi 4K action camera. I've got it in an aluminum case just to protect it and to protect the lens in particular. Concerned about the lens getting scratched. It doesn't have any way to protect it. And so far Yi has not made a really good cover for that lens that you can just keep on it all the time. So I went ahead and bought this third-party aluminum case to keep the camera in. And it does have interchangeable filters here, so you can put neutral density filters if you don't want the stuttery, real high-speed shutter effect. You can cut that down by putting a neutral density filter on it when you're shooting outdoors. Anyway, the camera itself is got some really nice features that I like a lot. Now, full disclosure, I bought this camera with my own money. Yi didn't send this to me, and Yi isn't sponsoring this video. I just happen to like this camera a lot. Now, the camera is a 4K camera. The 4K end of it is a little bit limited. You can only shoot the super wide 4K, and it can only shoot at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second at that frame rate, or at that resolution. Now, there are various frame rates on this camera and various resolutions. At 4K, you can shoot 30 or 24 or 30 frames per second. And it has a standard 4K and what they call 4K Ultra, which is a very very field of view. At 2.7K, you can shoot 24, 30, 48, or 60 frames per second. And again, it has, at 2.7K, it has a very wide field of view and then a wide field of view. And then at 1080p, you can shoot 24, 30, 48, 60, and 120 frames per second. And then if you want to drop down to 720p, you can shoot up to 240 frames per second, which might be interesting if you're shooting some kind of action that needs a really slow effect. It can go clear down to 480p. I don't see any reason to do that. And it does do some odd resolutions, like 1920 by 1440, which gives you kind of a square aspect ratio. And that one can shoot up to 60 frames per second. One of the interesting things about this camera is the customer service. When I first ordered this camera and I first got it, one of the things that I noticed was that it did not shoot 24 frames per second. What I was having to do to get 24 frames per second was to switch over to PAL mode, shoot at 25 frames per second, and then step it down in the editing software and pitch the audio just a little bit so it didn't pitch up, which worked, but it was a hassle to do, especially if you're editing a lot of footage. So I wrote to Yi and asked for a 24 frame per second frame rate. Now, I don't know if I was the first person ever to do this or not, but what was interesting was that they, within a month, posted a new update for the camera, which included 24 frames per second at almost every frame rate. In fact, I think it is every frame rate can now shoot 24 frames per second. The camera has a very responsive touchscreen. It is very fast when you hit the buttons. It's very reactive. I've never had any problems with this touchscreen. It makes it really nice to use this camera. The other thing it has is this view screen is very bright. I can be outdoors in the daylight and see this. Now, sometimes you have to shade it a little bit if the sun's hitting it directly, but I have no problem seeing the viewfinder at night. It also comes with an app that you can put on your smartphone that allows you to completely control the camera remotely. So in one particular shoot, I was shooting down into a swimming pool from up above, and I was able to not only view the shot on my cell phone, but control the camera when it was when I was starting and stopping it, and I could even change the frame rate. I could change the resolution if I wanted to. All of that from the app on the phone, and the app works really well. It's easy to set up. It's easy to turn on. It connects automatically. There's no hassle with it at all. Now again, this is not the 4K Plus, this is just the 4K. The nice thing about the 4K Plus is that you can add an external microphone to it, which this one you cannot, at least so far. I understand there's a possibility they could update the firmware so that you could connect a microphone through the USB jack. It does have two microphones up here, so it records stereo sound, and if you're kind of doing either selfie mode or first person, and you've got it on a handle and you're controlling it this way and you're narrating, it's actually not bad. It picks up your voice pretty well. It's not great audio, but it's passable for if you're narrating a travel video or something like that, and you can do some EQ to it to make the quality of the audio less tinny. Now, one of the other things that I did invest in is I got the Yi gimbal, 3-axis gimbal. Now this gimbal works really nice. One of the things I do like about it is it's incredibly simple to use. There are 3 modes. There's a lock mode where it just locks the camera forward. There is a pan mode, which it does not tilt up or down. It just pans side to side as you are operating the camera. And then there is a follow mode, basically where it will tilt up and down or side to side as you move. There's no need to use a joystick. It's just as you turn the camera, it follows along. And I find that actually much more intuitive than trying to use a joystick to control the camera while I'm walking or doing some other active movement while I'm operating the camera. Now, interestingly, I don't actually use this camera like an action camera. I use this in place of other cameras that I don't have really financial access to. I'll use it as a Steadicam. What I'll do is I'll put it at 1080p mode in the narrow field of view, and it actually works really good for doing following. If you're filming actors and you want to follow backwards as they're walking forward, it works really well for that. Also, I tend to use this more for kind of epic shots. One of the things that I'm a fan of is the old Cinerama movies. And those old Cinerama movies were shot with 3 cameras that each had a 28mm lens photographed onto 35mm film. And they were projected back. All 3 pieces of film were projected back in a theater on a very wide curved screen. And they had a very wide field of view. And if you put this in the widest field of view, it really emulates that old Cinerama effect, particularly if you're doing landscapes or you're in an environment where you want to see a lot of it. And it works great for that kind of thing, especially if you're doing travel logs. If you've ever seen any of the old Cinerama films, that's the effect that you get. And that's one of the things that this camera is really great at. Now, another really big advantage of this camera is the battery life. I've had this camera running for an hour, hour and a half, and still had battery life left. Now, I've purchased 3 additional batteries, and I've never actually had to replace a battery on a shoot yet. So the battery life is really, really good. It does have another nice feature in that it has a standard tripod mount on the bottom. A lot of these action cameras don't. You have to buy adapters if you want to connect them to a standard tripod. That makes it really, really nice. You can mount this thing to anything. And of course, with some of the cages, if you want to use the GoPro accessories, you can get an adapter to put it on a GoPro mount if you want to mount it to a helmet or to handlebars or anything like that. It does have an underwater housing, which I have not yet purchased. I haven't had a need for it yet, but that is probably one of the next things that I am going to get for this camera is the underwater housing. I have a few projects coming up where I might want to do some underwater shots, and that's probably one of the next things that I'm going to do. Anyway, that's basically just a short overview of the Yi action camera. It's a really good little camera. It's very competitively priced with the GoPro products, and I think the quality is right there with the GoPro products. This does have the Sony sensor in it, so it is a high quality sensor, and it is at a very affordable price. So anyway, that's my little review of the action camera. If you liked this video, please subscribe and hit like, and hit the little bell up there because that'll let you know when we've put up new videos. Look for more videos in this series where we're going to be talking about some of the equipment that we use here, and hope you like it. Thanks.